who move towards this thing. And the one more thing I will say is that typically it's almost always the case that the person who finishes first without ranked choice voting is the person that ultimately wins. That may not be the case here in New York because of that alliance and other factors, but more than likely, Eric Adams will be the next mayor if, as statistics have shown, our next Democratic mayoral candidate. If, as statistics have shown, ranked choice voting does not alter the outcome of the primary preferences from the very first round.
Well, here's the deal. The reality is this here, as far as I'm concerned, is, and Lawrence, your final comment before I let you go. Then I'm going to go to you, Greg. I'm going to bring in Matthew Dowd. Bottom line is this here, Lawrence. Doesn't matter if it's ranked choice. If you do not reform the system, what Democrats in New York are doing, they are allowing Republicans to have a talking point saying, see what happens when they run elections. This is not hard. It's not hard to know how to properly count. We saw the same mess with the Iowa Democratic Party in the primary last year. And so fix your damn voting laws, get it done. And again, Democrats, have the guts to call out your own party in New York City and New York State, Lawrence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is something that people have been calling for New York City to fix that Board of Elections for decades now. And Democrats control the state legislature now completely. If they want to do it, they can do it. They can fix this. And so far they're making the right noises, but they've made the right noises before, and somehow every year they fail to fix it. So I'm hopeful that this was just such a disaster, and people realize what the stakes are now, that they really do finally reform that system. Because the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter what your laws are. If you have really bad administration, it's gonna disenfranchise voters, and it's gonna cause doubt, and that's what we've got in New York City right now, unfortunately.
That's right.
All right, Lawrence, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, then. I want to bring in right now, first of all, while we bring in Matthew Dowd, Greg Carr. Again, this is on what's happening in New York. It's a huge mess. And as a matter of fact, when the show's over, I'm going to text Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright and say there needs to be an activation in New York City, New York State, putting pressure on them, because this makes no sense. If there are places that are making it harder for people to vote, and New York State is one of those places, those laws need to be changed. Pressure needs to be brought to bear, Greg.
Absolutely. And it has to be a full spectrum strategy. One of the things I respect about Sam Alito is he's a true racist. He's a true white nationalist, but he also understands, he's also very condescending. So it's almost like you Negroes got to be smart enough to outsmart me. And so what you saw today in today's Supreme Court case, it isn't like Gamillion versus Lightfoot, which was the Tuskegee case out of 1960, where they used the 15th Amendment to say y'all drew these district lines to exclude every black voter in Tuskegee, which is almost damn near impossible. But it wasn't a case like that. This case was about him saying there are many different ways to vote, so you really aren't being harmed, and any law is an inconvenience of one of the time to other. In New York City, yes, the election laws are Byzantine. Yes, as Lawrence said, the administration of them is problematic. And yes, we must organize and push back and change that. In the meantime, this is their inaugural voyage through ranked choice voting, which I support. I think that's a good idea. There are 120,000+ ballots still out absentee, and that's not even counting the provisionals and a possible recanvass. 40,000 of those ballots are in Manhattan. Another 35,000 are in Queens, and many of those precincts in Manhattan favor Garcia. So what Reese said is very true. Yang and Garcia, in this kind of virgin journey in ranked voting, teamed up in a way. As we see subsequent elections go, people are going to think differently and maybe use these alliances. I'm not sure Garcia doesn't overtake Adams based on where the outstanding ballot is, which leads me to the final and most important point. While we are fighting in the courts, while we are fighting in the legislatures, you register to vote, everybody. You organize. And this is one of the things Cliff and Latasha are doing. You're going around the country, you're getting people together. We have to pursue a multi-platform strategy. So, and you're right, Reese, you're absolutely right. We all want immediate results. It's ugly in New York, but I think it's going to work out ultimately, and everybody just needs to calm down. I'm much more concerned about Maya Wiley losing in a way because of exactly what you said, and we're going to find that out probably to the middle of the month.
Yeah.
All right, so hold tight 1 second. We're still trying to figure out the technical issues on my side. I'm going to go to a commercial break. When we come back from this break, we're going to talk with Matthew Dowd, longtime Republican strategist, who now says, in order to save America, we must elect Democrats. That's next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
When you study the music, you get Black history by default. And so no other craft could carry as many words as rap music.
I try to intertwine that and make that create whatever I'm supposed to send out to the universe.
A rapper, for the longest period of time has gone through phases.
I love the word. I hate what it's become, and to this generation, the way they visualize it.
Its narrative kind of like has gotten away and spun away from, I guess, the ascension of Black people.
I'm proud of the officers I worked with on January 6th. They fought extremely hard.
Our worst nightmare really come true, an attack on American democracy right here in the nation's capital.
I experienced the most brutal, savage, hand-to-hand combat of my entire life.
I received chemical burns to my face that still have not healed to this day.
I just remember people still swinging metal poles at us, and they were pushing and shoving. They were spraying us with, bear mace and pepper spray.
They were all shouting at us, calling us traitors.
It's been very difficult seeing elected officials and other individuals whitewash the events of that day or downplay what happened.
As an American and as an Army veteran, it's sad to see us attacked by our fellow citizens.
Midas Touch is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Black women have always been essential. So now how are you going to pay us like that?
And it's not just the salary. I mean, there are a whole number of issues that have to support us as women.
Yeah. That's what we deserve. We shouldn't have to beg anybody for that.
I think that we are trying to do our best as a generation to honor the fact that we didn't come here alone and we didn't come here by accident.
I always say every generation has to define for itself what it means to move the needle forward.
So this is Roger Bob. I got a message for Roland Ascot Martin. Buddy, you're supposed to be hooking me up with some of these ascots that you claim to wear. Where's mine, buddy?
Hey, yo, Peace World. What's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm Kirsten Cinema. I found the time to train and run the Boston Marathon.
I think it'll be the most emotional run of my entire life.
I found the time to train and complete the Ironman competition in New Zealand. And almost a dozen other races. And I had plenty of time to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. But I just couldn't find the time to come to Washington, do my job, and vote for the January 6th Commission to investigate the domestic terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol. Kirsten Cinema. Bad for Arizona, bad for America. Let's get a real Democratic senator in Arizona.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, So a lot of y'all always asking me about some of the pocket squares that I wear. Now, Robert don't have one on. Now, I don't particularly like the white pocket squares. I don't like even the silk ones. And so I was reading GQ magazine a number of years ago, and I saw this guy who had this pocket square here, and it looks like a flower. This is called a shibori pocket square. This is how the Japanese manipulate the fabric to create this sort of flower effect. So I'm going to take it out and then place it in my hand so you see what it looks like. And I said, man, this is pretty cool. And so I tracked down, it took me a year to find a company that did it. And so they make these about 47 different colors. And so I love them because, again, as men, we don't have many accessories to wear, so we don't have many options. And so this is really a pretty cool pocket square. Now, what I love about this here is you saw when it's in the pocket, it gives you that flower effect like that. But if I wanted to also, unlike because if I flip it and turn it over, it actually gives me a different type of texture, and so therefore it gives me a different look. So there you go. So if you actually want to get one of these shibori pocket squares, we have them in 47 different colors. All you got to do is go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So it's RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. All you got to do is go to my website, and you can actually get this. Now, for those of you who are members of our Bring the Funk fan club, there's a discount for you to get our pocket squares. That's why you also got to be a part of our Bring the Funk fan club. And so that's what we want you to do. And so it's pretty cool. So if you want to jazz your look up, you can do that. In addition, y'all see me with some of the feather pocket squares. My sister, who's a designer, she actually makes these. They're all custom made. So when you also go to the website, you can also order one of the customized feather pocket squares right there at RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. So please do so. And of course, it goes to support the show. And again, if you're a Bring the Funk fan club member, you get a discount. This is why you should join the fan club. All right, folks, welcome back. So we are having a lot of technical issues here, so I had to switch cameras. I'm using camera on a laptop. I hate this camera, but I'm working it all out, but it's all good. My next guest, he has a long-time political analyst. You've seen him on ABC, also has worked in Republican politics. He has been one of the most vocal critics of what we have been seeing across this country with Republicans in terms of dealing with Donald Trump, laws being passed, but especially when you talk about what has happened with voting. If you look at Matthew Dowd's Twitter feed, you will see that he has been quite vocal, speaking out against what he is seeing as folks really hurting democracy in this country. There's a book coming out in September. The book is called Revelations on the River, Being a Prophet for Your Own Path. Matthew Dowd joins us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Matthew, glad to have you. First and foremost, today's Supreme Court decision, we see the Manhattan DA's office indicting the Trump organization. Republican Party is still just loving them some Donald Trump. And you just made it clear that in order for this nation to move forward, Republicans cannot be in power.
Well, thank you for having me, Roland, a long-time fan and friend of yours. I think we're at that point. And with the Republican Party no longer is a Democratic Party, a party of democracy. So there's two entities today. One believes in democracy. We may disagree with some issues, but they actually believe in democracy. And another political party that does not believe in democracy anymore. And I think the idea that you can say, I'm going to vote for some Republicans because they're not as bad as Donald Trump, actually enables the system that is allowing what's going on in state after state after state, especially here in Texas where I am, which they're about to go into a special session and even put more impediments and restrictions and ability to nullify elections in place. So in my view, the moment today, it's a 4-alarm fire. And we can't argue about what landscape we should be or how we think bedrooms. We got to put out the fire, and the only way to put out the fire is to hire Democratic firemen and firewomen. And let's do that. And it's going to take a couple elections. In my view, the only way the Republicans will change and come back from this place they are is to suffer devastating losses in a series of elections. And so that's where I am.
You said something that I think is really important when you said, look, they are going to support him regardless. And you see that. I saw Eric Erickson and Ari Fleischer and Geraldo Rivera and all Jack Nicklaus and all these people are like, yeah, despite this, I still supporting Trump, for the 4 years. And you're sitting there going, so y'all just completely just oblivious to what the hell's going on here? And James Baker did this big interview, I think, with a New Yorker, where he talked about, look, I'm a Republican and it doesn't matter. I keep telling people, this is about power. This is about power. That's all their focus is, power.
Well, it's about power, and it seems to be about Donald Trump has shown them the downhill slide, and they're running downhill as fast as they can to get to the bottom. And to me, Donald Trump could disappear from the planet and tomorrow, and we're in just as bad or maybe even worse situation than we were before the November election. Because nearly every single Republican has adopted this strategy across the country at this point in time. So it's not fundamentally about Donald Trump, and you know, I've been very critical of him for 5 years, 4.5 years. It's about the Republican Party and who they are today. And again, the only way to fix this problem in today's democracy, which is very fragile, is to remove them from office.
And when we talk about removed from office, and we spend a lot of time trying to walk people through this whole deal. And I have people, Matthew, who will say, Roland, you're shilling for Democrats. No, what I'm doing is I'm walking you through saying, this is what's going to happen when the folks, if they are in power. We see what happened when Mitch McConnell, stole that Supreme Court seat. They knew what was going on. They knew the cases that were coming down. They knew that if there was a 5-4 progressive/liberal majority on the Supreme Court, that fundamentally alters this country, and they were going to do whatever is necessary. That's why, and look, the Obama White House, Obama was pissed off at me because I said, you need to appoint a black woman, you need to make an historic appointment, ratchet up the political pressure because this is high stakes. No, he wanted to play highbrow. He points Merrick Garland. I said, man, ain't nobody fighting for another white guy on the Supreme Court. Like it or not, that's just fact. And so I think Democrats have played softball. They've sat here and, well, like even right now, this crap with Manchin and Sinema, look, the other side, they're playing hardball. They literally are saying, we're going to use every ounce of power we have on the state level. And you got 2 Democrats in the Senate who are saying, no, but if we can get bipartisan and we all can just work together. And I'm like, what world are y'all living in? Because it's not quite the one I think we're living in.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And as you know, I think the idea of sticking with the filibuster in the midst of an assault on democracy, and you're saying that the filibuster is more important than democracy, is just ludicrous. And the idea, I'm a huge believer of bipartisanship. Coming together and doing that, it's impossible today to do that. Bipartisanship is like a relationship. And if the person you're in a relationship is lying to you all the time, doesn't share your same values, and you can't trust, you can't have a relationship. And you can't have bipartisanship with another entity that does not believe in the same values that you do. And so I've criticized Senator Sinema, I've criticized Senator Manchin, because you have to put a priority on this. And the priority should be democracy, justice, and the truth. And if some rule, some long tradition, which we both know has a tradition that's kept people from getting voting rights, that's the tradition of the filibuster. If those get in the way of a higher priority, which is the truth, justice, and democracy, you need to let go of those. I've been critical of the Democrats in this moment because I don't think they've raised enough alarm and fought this enough fiercely and fastly enough in order to combat this. Many Democrats are still acting like this is the times of 25 years ago when you can sit there and have a debate in a subcommittee meeting. This is the most important issue of our time. We can have all the infrastructure we want. We can have all kinds of tax questions and all that. But if we lose our democracy, none of that matters.
First, sorry about that. I'm going to bring in Misha Cross, who joins us right now, Democratic Strategist. We still have Reese Colbert, Greg Carr, and Amisha. A question for Matthew, but also address the issue of trying to get the Democrat strategists and political operatives and the politicians to understand that what is happening right now is literally about the next 50 to 100 years. That's what this is about right now. Misha, you're on mute.
Absolutely. And I said, thanks for being here, Matthew. My question is around, honestly, setting this stage, because I'm coming out down from the Supreme Court decision today. We know that the track to move voting rights forward is the road less traveled, and it's one that it looks like Republicans are winning, and they're getting a huge assist from the courts. What is next on that frontier, and what can Democrats do? Because it seems like they're so afraid to push go on in the filibuster, and that's the only way to move forward with the Voting Rights Act as well as with the For the People Act.
So to me, first we have to call this out as strongly and as quickly as we possibly can. And I think the pressure on the Biden administration to do whatever they can possible to prevent these things from happening. Obviously, we can't control what the Supreme Court does in this moment, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do, which obviously completely gutted the Civil Rights Act from 1965 that many people's blood brought us, and now it's basically gone in this moment. To me, the fundamental way this is going to be fixed is people are going to have to overcome the impediments in 2022 and vote in overwhelming numbers in order for this not to happen. And my biggest fear is the impediments are awful, the restrictions are awful. My biggest fear is the level of nullification they want to put in elections. So even if people overcome the impediments and the restrictions and do everything possible and vote, they are trying to pass laws that allow elections to be nullified. And that, to me, is the scariest, most autocratic thing that's getting discussed today.
All right, Reese Colbert.
Hi, Matthew. My question for you is this. Listen, we've seen the quote unquote never Trump Republicans who have kind of formed this temporary alliance with the Democratic Party. But I think, as you pointed out, the Republican Party hasn't pivoted away from Trumpism. In fact, it's swallowed whole by Trumpism. How much longer do you think this never Trump Republicanism is going to last? And why should Democrats kind of trust the never Trump Republican to truly be an ally, at least for the next 2 years, if not the next 4 years?
So I do my own, I try to put pressure. I know a lot of the never Trump Republicans. I know a lot of them. I was friends with a lot of them. I've talked to a lot of them, and I've tried to convince them that the only vehicle to fix this problem right now is not to try to redo the Republican Party, but is to go all in with the Democratic Party, remove the Republicans from office, and then maybe at some point they'll fix themselves in this. I am a firm believer, though, that we have to try to bring in every possible ally in this moment as we can. We might have disagreed them on certain things, and we may even not trust them completely in this moment. But I know we fought many wars where we had allies that we didn't completely trust. But in order to remove a problem, and the World War II is a perfect example of this, we had allies that we didn't necessarily, agree with or want. But I think we have to do this in a concerted effort. But I think many of people like me and others need to speak out and convince them that the Democratic Party right now is the only party of democracy in America. And if you really want to fix this problem today, not only for president and U.S. Senate and Congress, you have to vote for Democrats for governor, lieutenant governor, state senator, state rep, sheriff, county judge, county commissioner, everywhere down the line until this cancer is removed.
Thank you.
Roland, is that? You going to me? Okay. I think so. Maybe Roland. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us tonight. I have a quick question. 50 years ago in a day in this country, 18-year-olds couldn't vote. Here we are on the 50th anniversary of that 26th Amendment, which of course comes into being because enough people wanted it and organized. You said something in the last few days I thought was very striking. You said, the Democrats should go full-born partisan, and then they should use truth as their North Star. We've seen worse odds than this before in the past. And you're absolutely right. I think a lot of us who are paying attention share your concern about nullification. But I think about Dr. King talking about interposition and nullification, and realize that if you're using truth as your North Star, you can even overwhelm that. We can push this past even these machinations. But when you said use truth as the North Star to the Democratic Party, what did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is the idea that just this constantly seeking for Republican friendliness in the midst of this, and we have to put a bipartisan face on it, we have to do this. I think we have to set a sort of, as I said, the truth is the North Star. And the truth is what happened on January 6th, why it happened, and who was behind it. And I don't mean the 400 or 500 people that were arrested. I mean elected officials that were behind it, that instigated and facilitated it. And so truth ought to be all our pursuit. It ought to be all our pursuit every day of our lives, that we pursue truth regardless of partisanship, regardless of where we are on things, regardless of our ideology. Truth ought to be the sort of the sunset that we all head towards in this moment. And so we have to drop all the things that get in the way of truth and confront it. And I like to remind people that the 14th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution were passed in a purely partisan way. Because if we followed the same cinema mansion mandate today, we would have not had a 14th and 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution in our country. And so if partisanship is the only way to get to the truth and justice, use partisanship, because bipartisanship is not the goal. The goal is truth.
Wow. That's very powerful.
Really trying to ask people to read. I mean, that's part of the problem. See, what you just said there, I think, speaks to what we're now dealing with. What we're dealing with is these people who are throwing out stuff. Yes, when they go bipartisanship, like every time a Democrat gets elected, the media goes crazy about bipartisanship. They don't give a damn about that. Republicans don't care. Like, Republicans will not appoint a Democrat to their cabinet. They're like, we're not doing that. We're going to appoint Republicans. That's the first thing. Democrats, are you going to put any Republicans in your cabinet? I want one Democrat to say, hell no. I mean, again, elections have consequences. And I agree with you. It would be great if there were 10 or 15 senators who would support these bills. Sure, we saw with Juneteenth, okay, it was unanimous consent on the Senate side. But the reality is, Juneteenth is a national holiday. It's not the same as voting rights. It's not the same as infrastructure. It's not the same as COVID relief. It's not the same as these major bills. And I think part of the deal here, Matthew, is that the Republican Party is what I call a far right party. The problem with the Democratic Party, it's actually too big of a tent. Meaning you've got moderates, you've got conservatives, you've got progressives, you've got liberals, so you got to satisfy a lot more constituencies on the Democratic side than you do on the Republican side.
Well, I think that's true. And the Democratic Party for the last 50 years has been a much bigger, more diverse tent than the Republican Party. But the Republican Party has become a lot less diverse over the course of the last 20 years, much less diverse over the last 5 years, for sure, much less diverse over the last 5 years in this process. I mean, I think that everyone has to go back into the basics, which is, what are the fundamental values? Like, let's all let go of the arguments over some specific policy that's on, healthcare. Let's let go of those arguments for right now. Let's let go of the tax code arguments. Let's go of all of those things just for now and say what matters the most to us. I reminded people the other day that 1933 to 1945 Germany, they had great infrastructure improvements and the economy was moving. Simultaneously, they lost their democracy in the midst of it. So the idea that I think every day the Biden administration and every Democrat, every individual, I try to do this, ought to wake up every day and say, how can I help preserve democracy today? Last Tuesday, I went down to this small town in Hayes County in Texas and signed up to be a volunteer deputy registrar with 35 other people. Because I think everybody has to figure out what are the things we can do in this moment to help. And I'm going to do whatever I possibly can in Texas, where I am, to elect Democrats wherever I possibly can. And then I'm willing to have an argument 4 or 5, 7, 8, 10 years from now when the Republican Party decides they're part of democracy. I can have an argument with them then. But today, it's the only path forward.
Well, I mean, that particular point, I think, is a really critical one, and it is. And I say this to people, and they think I'm joking, and I love these people who comment on my Facebook page and YouTube channel. When I say, folks, if you have to study the past, meaning when you talk about the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, those Reconstruction Amendments, because when you talk about that, it was radical Republicans fighting Southern Democrats.
Yep.
And radical Republicans actually said, damn it, if they are not going to support it, ain't our problem. We're going straight ahead, because they understood on the flip side, those amendments took place in the aftermath of the Civil War. It was not 20 years later that the Great Compromise of 1877 happened. It was literally 14 years. Jim Crow laws were put into place. They understood that changes had to be made. Great Compromise happens in 1877, and then 1890, Mississippi said, oh, we need a constitutional convention. One black person invited, Isaiah T. Montgomery. He then votes to strip black people of their right to vote. Not one black person elected statewide in Mississippi ever since then. And as an African American, people say, well, why are you so harsh with Senator Tim Scott? Because I'm sorry, I can't accept a modern day Isaiah T. Montgomery voting to not move forward with the For the People Act on the John Lewis Act. And yes, Matthew, it offended me seeing all those Republicans travel down to Selma with John Lewis for Selma 50th and having that regular ass field trip, taking photos. And I'm going, but you're going to come back the same way you went. I said, Congressman Lewis, I'm sorry. They can't come on the field trip, because if that's going to be how they vote, to me, it's a photo op. And so, look, I am 52. I have 13 nieces and nephews. What we're fighting for today, what you're talking about, Matthew, what Greg and Reese and Amisha, what we're talking about is literally our children's children. And will they be boxed in under the weight of a minority party that doesn't represent the interests of America, but they hold the keys to the power?
Well, you're absolutely right. And I will add the other thing to this. What is amazing to watch in this is the GOP could care less about their voters. They could care less about their voters. Actually, the GOP thinks their voters, the base voters, are a bunch of yahoos. And how do I know that? Because if somebody's willing to lie to you, tell you a bunch of conspiracy theories, and not do anything that's going to benefit your life, they just take you for, they don't even care. And I actually think a bunch of the Republicans get in a room and say, what crazy stuff can we dream up that they'll accept? And they
I agree.
And then they accept it. And so I think
Fox News goes, we'll champion it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. We have to drive a wedge, in my view, a wedge between the Republicans who hold office and their voters. And I have criticized the voters, and I've done all of that. But it's fundamentally, leadership demands truth. And if you're an elected official not telling the truth, and going to your point, all those Republicans that on one day voted for the Juneteenth holiday, which is obviously, I'm in Texas, very important, and what happened in Galveston and all of that, and 2 years late from being freed as slaves. But to me, them voting like that and the next day turning around and voting against voting rights is akin to saying, I have black friends too. That's what that vote was akin to, that saying that as you operate in Europe. I think we have to keep saying this. And part of the problem is the media. The media treats the two political parties as equal in standing in this country, and they have to stop doing that.
Well, but I'll tell you, but part of that, Greg, is because the media, mainstream media, is scared to death of being criticized. They also don't want to call a thing a thing. They don't want to sit here and check folks accordingly. There's a reason a lot of these national media shows won't call me. Because look, I called it like it is when I was on CNN. If I'm on ABC this week, I'm going to sit here and say what it is, because I'm not scared. And Greg, what I've been saying to Democrats, I said this directly to President Barack Obama's face. Man, stop going to the suburbs of Virginia and Ohio touting your Affordable Care Act. Go to the brokest, whitest, most conservative, sickest county in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, and say, I passed that bill for y'all because y'all are sick. Y'all need help. Y'all are broke. And y'all keep voting for this fool. So go ask your senator why they keep standing against you. Democrats, it's amazing how They love talking specifically about black pain, but they don't want to talk about white pain. I told Senator Bernie Sanders to his face in his office, Greg, man, go talk to them broke ass white people.
Well, I mean, Roland, I mean, you know, again, this is why I think that other decision this week, that Americans for Prosperity Foundation versus Bonta case, that Supreme Court case, is very important. Rather than expand the electorate, go back to the 1960s, whether it be Lyndon Johnson, whether it be a guy like Everett Dirksen, who is a cat named Joe Williams, an elder from Tallulah, Louisiana. He's an ancestor now, Democrat his whole life. But he said, you know, I respect a guy like Dirksen. And that's, you know, from Amisha's home state of Illinois, and didn't ever get many black votes out of Chicago, but knew with the Republicans in the minority in the 1960s that he wanted to be on the right side of history, talking about trying to build democracy. That's what you're talking about. But what we've seen, and again, that Americans for Prosperity case of a piece with Citizens United and everything else, rather than trying to expand the electorate, do, Matthew, like what you're doing, going to these small towns in Texas. And let me get down here. People are now conceding the idea between voter apathy and voter suppression and that the electorate is a small pie, and that money is going to control a great deal of this. And that's why mass commercial media is very nearly worthless in this. They conceded the idea of small d democracy and said, let's fight over this shrinking piece by trying to influence enough to edge out this election. And I wonder then if what is teetering on the brink is even the rhetoric of small d democracy in this country. We're not even going to try, because if everybody who was eligible to vote registered to vote, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
And Matthew, Democrats gotta say, hey, white voters, if you go to Latinos and you want to talk about Latinos and you want to go say women, and you want to say black, well, damn it, you gotta say white. If Congressman Tim Ryan is gonna have to be that explicit if he wants to win the Senate seat in Ohio and say, hey, white labor workers in Ohio, the Republican Party don't give a damn about y'all.
I'm 1,000% with you. I'm 1,000% with you with everything that's been said by both of y'all in this. It is an election where we can't leave any neighborhood community untended to or untalked to in this. It's the only way we can go forward. One of the things, Texas had an unprecedented turnout in the 2020 election. We ranked 49th in turnout in 2020, and we had more voters than ever turned out before, which means Texas is fundamentally not a red state. It's a non-voting state in this point in time, just like many other states that we see. But I think candidates have to stop with the millions and millions and millions of dollars that go to media consultants,
yes,
and actually get in a pickup truck or get in whatever vehicle you have and go to every single place they possibly can, including white rural America, who actually has been hurt as much as anybody by the policies the Republicans have sponsored.
Reese, I want to go to you on this with them. I'm going to go to Amisha. I mean, you've been, let's just say, real raw on social media. That's how you caught our attention. That's why comedian J. Anthony Brown, he said on Clay's show, he said, boy, that's the most cussing woman with conviction I've ever heard. Matthew, if you do not follow Black Women Views on Twitter, you need to trust me. If she put out a greatest hits album, it would be 50 songs long. But Reese, what we're talking about here is Democrats got to get some guts. They got to be, for instance, we have had, and this is right up your alley, we have seen at least 6 hit pieces against Vice President Kamala Harris since they have been in the White House, and these folks ain't said a damn thing to Politico or the rest of these folks. Damn it, if you gonna swing, swing.
Absolutely. You know how I feel about that, Chad. Oh my God. Like, they just let Kamala Harris get dragged all day, every day. What is up with that? You have to get some fighting spirit. You cannot be above the fray. You cannot have this gravitas about you. Voters do not reward being civil. They don't reward being diplomatic. They reward whoever gets to them first and has the most compelling message, whether that's Republicans playing on their emotions. Right now, it's critical race theory. Before that, it was the immigrant caravan. Before that, it was radical Islamic terrorists. Republicans know how to set the narrative. They're setting the narrative on the border. Now it's the border crisis. It's the Biden border crisis. You don't even talk about child separation anymore. And when it is, it's Biden Harris are still separating children. And so Republicans know, they always know how to set the narrative. And then you have the media that that regurgitates the Republican narratives as, well, we're Democrats. What do you have to say about all these Republicans attacking you? Instead of them attacking the narratives or examining the narratives at all. And so Democrats have to figure out that this is not a meritocracy in our democracy with a little d, because right now it's not much of a democracy. You don't get rewarded for passing the best legislation, for actually creating jobs. Democratic presidents have created millions more jobs, and Republican presidents have consistently lost jobs, but yet Republicans win on the economy, right? When voters go and the exit polls poll voters. And so Democrats have to figure out the messaging strategy before they get swallowed whole. And one thing I retweeted something yesterday. It was about the Equality Act, and it was a fact sheet. And I see plenty of fact sheets come out of the White House. And I said, okay, fact sheets are great, but people don't click on links and they don't read more than 60 seconds. I've written an article and it'll tell you it's a 20-minute read. And the statistics show that people spent on average 73 seconds reading a 22-minute article. Okay, I can put a link on a tweet and I can see that 2% of the people will click through to the links. So if I put a screenshot, if I put a meme in that, then I'm going to reach. If I get 1 million impressions on that tweet, 1 million people are going to see that meme. They're going to see that visual, and 2% of the people are going to click on the link to fact check whatever the hell it is that I put in that thing. So Democrats have to start realizing that you're not going to win if you don't attack the disinformation, the misinformation, the narratives. You can't just ignore them. You can't bat them aside. You have to attack them. You have to attack them fiercely, consistently, and start to create your own more compelling narratives. And I think, to your point, Roland, that's where it is, addressing white people as white people. Instead of just saying working class voters, say white working class voters. You know, you have to start addressing the elephant in the room and really speaking to people in a way that's going to resonate with them so that they do turn out and they vote for the Democrats.
Mm-hmm. This Matthew, and look, there are a lot of people who are highly critical of the Lincoln Project. There are people who call it a grift operation. I've heard everything. Here's my whole deal. Okay, y'all can call whatever you want to call it. That's fine. Here's what I do know. They are damn good at putting some ads together. And what I said to Democrats, y'all should stop all that bitching and sit down and say, I need to go to school. I need to see, I need to go. Because again, it's messaging. The Republican Party is all, and this is what, and Matthew, explain to the people who don't even understand your background about the political strategist piece. It's not about trying to convince 30 million people. It's about shifting 0.5% or 1% or shifting 30,000 votes and looking here and here and here. That's the Republican strategy. They are excellent at messaging. To Reese's point, Democrats want to come out with white papers and a whole thesis, and the Republican Party like, here the bumper sticker, slap it on your car and go get the hell on down the road. And so I'm like, Dems, and I've literally told Jamie Harrison, say, dog, go hire some folk and say, go sit with the Lincoln Project for a week to learn how to edit a damn video.
Well, I was going to say this earlier. So I worked on Democratic campaigns before I did President Bush and Arnold Schwarzenegger's campaign. So I've seen it all. The biggest difference between Democrats and Republicans is this. Republicans understand more clearly and consistently that voting is about values. And Democrats think it's about policy points, right? And people decide in their heart and their gut before it gets to their head. And Democrats think they're going to get in people's head and it's going to get to their heart. And that's not how people operate. You have to get to their gut and get to their heart on a values level, and I don't mean necessarily moral values, I mean a fundamental values level of like how people live their life on a day-to-day basis. Republicans consistently understand that better than Democratic campaigns. I have been through Democratic campaigns where they say, well, we have a 10-point plan on all of these issues, and here's all the elements, and here's all this, and here's why logically people should vote this way. And the voters are like, well, yeah, whatever. That's not how I feel about it, or it doesn't represent my values and the way I look at this. And so Democrats have to start creating campaigns that are based fundamentally on the values that people connect with. And until they do that, they're going to be in trouble in certain areas. And that's the biggest difference between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats try to go to the head first. Republicans go to the gut.
Amisha, and then Matthew's final point. Amisha, go ahead.
No, I think that was absolutely correct. We have to get tighter on messaging, but also react to people where they are. Democrats have a belief system that the intellectual level of their argument is going to be able to reach crowds en masse. And they also particularly target diverse groups without having a full understanding of how to target low-income white people. And you talked about this a little bit earlier, Roland. And part of that strategy, I think, is because both parties don't want to actually admit that low-income white people exist, even though they are such a large portion of the white population. It's a frustrating thing because time and time again, at the state level, at the local level, and at the national level, Democrats who could be very strong candidates and run very strong campaigns consistently fail because they fail to reach that communications piece that we heard Reese talk about earlier. I have too been in rooms. I have too led the PR strategy and been pushed back by leaders of state parties to say, okay, we want to have a 10-point analysis of environmental policy. Check that. No one's going to read it. No one is going to click it. No one cares. What we know strategically, and it exists across whether it's a political campaign, whether it's a social justice movement, regardless of what the movement or the action is, people's attention spans are small. The time frame that they have to actually gain broad understanding is even smaller. We're not trying to educate here. Throw that out the window. Education is not what the people are looking for. At the end of the day, you have to reach to what Matthew spoke about earlier, values, but you also have to reach to the things that they latch on to. When we talk about the economy, we know that matters to Americans, but not in terms of the dollars and cents, the here's how I take you there. What business are you going to bring in? Get to the root faster. And I think that Democrats have a very hard time doing that, not only with that, but also with healthcare, with education. We have to make sure that the messages are tightened up and go with the Republican play. This is one thing Democrats can't steal from Republicans, because Republicans have been in A+ in messaging for a very long time. And it's not because they're extremely strategic. It's because they understand the time span and the time frame of Americans when it comes to how they're going to latch on to the message. Very short, very quick. You have to be consistent. Republicans have been pushing the same message for the past 45, 50 years. Democrats try to change it up every few years in hopes that something will stick. It's not working.
Yeah.
Matthew, this is very simple. There are critical elections in 2022. If you're Democrats, you better be hardcore understanding messaging right now. You better be going in there, putting the money in. And this is where, and I'll tell you, and I remember Ambassador Andrew Young made this comment years ago when he said there's too many smart ass white boys in these campaigns who don't listen. They didn't listen in the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. A lot of them were not listening in 2020. And I'm gonna tell you right now, we had struggles even sitting here trying to squeeze political advertising money because the folks who are running the ad budgets, they want to put all the money on TV. And I'm sitting there saying, boo, TV ain't gonna get you any votes. You know why? They're turning that stuff off. This is boots on the ground. This is hardcore boots on the ground. Sherry Beasley lost the Supreme Court justice position in North Carolina by 400 votes. You know why? Because Democrats did not go to rural North Carolina. They just figured, hey, we can get the black folks in Charlotte and Raleigh and Durham. You got to go to rural North Carolina. That's how Warnock and Ossoff won in Georgia. Now Beasley is one of the candidates running for the United States Senate. Are Democrats going to get that? Are they actually putting the messaging in place right now? Are they sending trusted voices there, talking to them? What are your issues? Are they doing that? If you're Ohio, you got to go, yes, to those rural places in Ohio, go look those broke ass white people in their eyes and say, guess what? Y'all voted for Trump and you didn't get a damn thing. His trade war screwed you. You got to be able to go to those broke ass farmers in Iowa and say, how many of y'all filed bankruptcy because y'all were running behind Trump? You got to go to Wisconsin when Senator Ron Johnson is running and say, all you dairy farmers, how many of y'all now broke as hell because y'all were running behind Trump? And when he got out of there, he didn't give a damn about y'all filing for bankruptcy. You got to be clear as day when it comes to this, because when we talk about democracy being in peril, that is what we're seeing, because the Republican Party is the party of mega donors, and they are laughing. They are laughing at all of these broke, uneducated white people who keep giving them their votes. So for every Republican who says, black people, y'all keep giving Democrats your vote and you ain't got nothing in return, I can show you a lot of broke white people who ain't got nothing in return for voting for Republicans, Matthew.
So on the final point, Roland, I completely agree with that. And I think Democrats need to run candidates everywhere, even if places they may lose. They need to run them everywhere.
There you go. Everywhere. Don't let them roll up margins.
Red, purple, blue, run candidates everywhere, because even if you don't win now, you begin to crack into this, and it may not be successful in 2022, but it may actually help turn out people for statewide races. Run candidates every single place in every single election.
It's not that hard. Matthew Dowd, I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Put the book up again, please. Y'all, his book drops in September. You can do pre-orders now, Matthew?
Yes, sir. Pre-order.
Okay, you can pre-order the book, Revelations on the River, Being a Prophet for Your Own Path. And of course, he got some great blurbs there on the cover, George Stephanopoulos and Whoopi Goldberg. Matthew Dowd, always a pleasure. Look forward to having you back.
My pleasure. Anytime, my friend.
All right. Got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk to the former publicist for Bill Cosby. He has actually spoken in an interview with a radio station in Detroit. We'll discuss that next. We'll also talk about the indictments that dropped today against the Trump organization. You going to be going to jail. You and your thugs are going to jail. And y'all, that's just the doggone Manhattan DA. Letitia James, Attorney General, she ain't dropped her indictments yet either. I just love it. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I believe that people our age have lost the ability to focus the discipline on the art of organizing.
The challenges, there's so many of them and they're complex, and we need to be moving to address them. But I'm able to say, watch out, Tiffany. I know this road.
That is so freaking dope.
I want to know why what happened in Myanmar can't happen here.
No reason. I mean, it should happen here. No reason. Right? That's right.
America has crossed a line. The Republican Party believes in ending the American experiment, led by a man obsessed with power and money, who will say and do anything to seize control again.
This election was rigged.
To punish those who oppose him. His followers don't just disagree with us. They've got something worse in mind. We know what national populism and authoritarianism lead to. Every time.
That's what this is all about.
That's why we will never compromise with this evil. We will never step back from the line because we believe in America. Are you in this fight, or have they already won?
George Floyd's death hopefully put another nail in the coffin of racism.
You talk about awakening America. It led to a historic summer of protest.
I hope our younger generation don't ever forget that nonviolence is soul force.
Priceless.
Hi, I'm Amber Stevens-West from The Carmichael Show.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, the 2021 Essence Festival of Culture. Live loud and virtual experience. You can watch EssenceStudios.com and Essence.com Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So they got programming taking place all of those days. So you might want to go ahead and check that thing out. So look forward to that. Thank you very much for the partnership with Coca-Cola. All right, folks. Bill Cosby last night spent his first night out of prison in 3 years. And so here we go. Sorry about that, y'all. Bill Cosby spent his first night out of prison in 3 years after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court released him on yesterday. That was a huge decision, sent shockwaves all across the country because folks were not expecting that to actually happen. He gave an interview with a radio station out of Detroit, his first actual interview. He didn't talk yesterday, but he gave an interview where he talked about being in jail and people who couldn't afford lawyers, and talked about the issues they were facing in the criminal justice system, and he talked about what he went through. One of the folks, of course, who was at his side, one of the folks who was, of course, standing with him is my next guest. She joins us right now, Ebony Benson, a former publicist for Bill Cosby. Ebony, glad to have you here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. It has been a whole lot of discussion and comments. A lot of people feel as if what took place by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was wrong, but there are others who say, look, the law is the law, and that's how the justices rule. What do you make of all of this?
You know, honestly, I feel this is a big win for Cosby. He has fought so hard for his justice, for his freedom for so long. There are many times that we interviewed, even after the guilty verdict, expressing how he was going to continue on until his day came. And that day came. And I think it's wonderful. I'm happy that he is home with his family. I'm also happy that he was able to share about his experience and what he saw. There are a lot of people that are still in the system that don't have the resources that Bill Cosby has in order to attain the lawyers beyond trial lawyers and acquiring appeal attorneys. So I'm very happy for him.
So one of the things that this case has shown is that, look, you can go through a particular trial, you can go through that, and go through an appeal system. What is your response to people who say, this is what happened when you're rich, you're able to cut these type of deals with district attorneys as opposed to somebody without means?
I don't think Bill Cosby was able to cut any deal with an attorney. It was Bruce Castor's professional opinion that they didn't have sufficient evidence in order to try him. So I feel that they have to uphold what Bruce Castor said, which is why the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ultimately overturned the conviction.
When you hear Bill Cosby say he was vindicated, but the reality is that wasn't the case, because first of all, they did not state that the allegations made against him were untrue. What they said was that the deal that was cut should have prevented even him being prosecuted for these particular allegations. Moving forward, Andrew Wyatt said that Bill Cosby is going to return to the stage. He has other plans going forward. What do you think life is going to be like for Bill Cosby? Even because there are people who still are going to call him a rapist. People are going to call him a sexual assaulter. People are going to still be critical of venues where he performs. They're going to also go after them as well. And so what do you expect that life is going to be like?
I think that's definitely going to be an interesting road for him, even though Mr. Cosby has a strong mind and I know he believes wholeheartedly in his innocence. You do have to think about, like you said, those venues who are going to face backlash from hosting him, and also any support that could come from that. It's going to be a slippery slope, I think, to walk at first. But I think as time goes on, it could become more acceptable for him. But I'm not really sure. I can't project that far into the future. I know right now he's just happy to be home.
How have you had to deal with people who have said, how dare you as a Black woman be a spokesperson for a rapist? I'm quite sure that you've had those attacks on you.
Absolutely. But I fire right back. You know, how dare you question me for having my own mind, and being able to think independently for myself. When I became a part of the case, I stood within my own integrity, and I knew that once I walked into the courtroom and was able to see the evidence for myself and see what was happening to myself, I could make my own decision. And ultimately I did that. And I think we spoke about that before when I interviewed with you during either the first or second trial, that I was able to decipher for myself what was factual and what wasn't. And I definitely felt like, based on Bruce Castor's assessment, Cosby should have never faced trial.
Any questions from my panelists, Amisha Cross, Reese Colbert, or Greg Carr for Ebony Benson?
I guess my question is, coming off of this, we know that it was such a high profile case and has people, particularly women who are from various generations, who are commenting, with the older generation kind of rallying around him in certain senses, and the younger generation pushing back fully, reaching towards Me Too and saying that this was just unfair. This is a slap in the face to people who have been fighting to have their voices heard, and not just looking towards this case, but also looking at other cases. What do you think what type of precedent does this type of situation set? And what would you say to those women who feel as though justice was just not served?
Honestly, I can't speak directly to those women, and I'm not really sure what precedent this is going to set. I just know that in the court of public opinion, it's different versus the court of law. And I think in this situation, particularly, the Supreme Court was able to see that just in the trial process itself, Cosby didn't receive a fair process. As for survivors, I think that people should keep fighting. Just as Cosby kept fighting, keep fighting. Just because something has happened, it doesn't mean that you can't keep going forward and keep pushing for your voice to be heard.
Reese or Greg?
Thank you, Ebony, for being in this conversation. Something Monique Presley, who I know, of course, said on this show last night, I thought was very interesting and important. The other day, she said, take Bill Cosby out of this and put your son in, or your father, and I would add, or your daughter or your sister, in terms of the process. How important is it for us to, if we can, hold out and hold distinct Bill Cosby, the person, from the issue of right to Fifth Amendment, exercise your Fifth Amendment rights, prosecutorial overreach, and how this Cosby lesson perhaps should also be discussed as a lesson in criminal defense for anyone who finds themselves in a situation like this, particularly our people?
That's a really tough question. I'm gonna try to break apart a few of the things you touched on, which is when you consider it being someone you love that is going through this same process, you would want every stone turned over. You would want every force you could have behind your criminal defense team to make sure that your process is just as fair as anybody else's. I don't think that we would ever be able, well, I can't say that. It's hard for people to separate the celebrity from the man. And that's primarily because of our culture. We focus a lot on celebrities and people who have larger platforms. So I think it's very tough for us to separate that. But if we could and look at it as if it was our brother, our father, our uncle, we would want that similar type of justice.
Reese, any question for Ebony?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Ebony Benson, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. You guys have a good one.
All right. I will ask the panel this, the question I asked for her. Even though Bill Cosby is free, the reality is this is going to be associated with him for the rest of his life. And I don't think for a second that even if, as Andrew Wyatt said, he's going to be returning to the stage, I believe that this is going to, he will face protest. He will face people who say he shouldn't be out there. But what do you make of, again, this reaction that we have seen from black men, black women, from white men, white women, and others, where you have folks who say, even I've seen a lot of lawyers who say, hey, like it or not, the courts actually made a proper distinction, and they say it wasn't because of money, it was because of the law. How do we reconcile that, Greg, when you have others who say the law doesn't work in our favor, but then here you have people who are saying, no, here the law was applied fairly?
Roland, I'll be quite frank with you, and I think I'm not alone in this. I suspect we're all in this mood one way or the other. It's deeply troubling. It's, John Henry Clark, you saying some stories, it ain't no good guys. And, I lived in Philly for 17 years. I never met Bill Cosby, but I know a lot of people who know him. The idea that he would push up on people in casual places or ask somebody to come, to his house, whatever, it's all known stuff. And that doesn't make it right. It makes it wrong. At the same time, when it was Meek Mill in the dock, everybody jumped up and said, let's defend. I'm saying, did you hear the music? I'm of a certain age. You do what you want. Everybody do what they want. But there are too many things that are mixed in together at this point. And here's the problem. First of all, Bill Cosby out of jail, Mumia Abu-Jamal is not. Bill Cosby out of jail and Leonard Peltier is not. And, Mutulu Shakur is not. Russell Maroon Schultz is not. So we got real political prisoners. Bill Cosby not a political prisoner. And Quaaludes were not illegal. And Hugh Hefner is in the ground and had the Playboy Mansion where they doing half this business and still celebrated on TV. People watching Mad Men, celebrating George Clooney and them, trying to be like Frank Sinatra and them, John F. Kennedy ass all the way. You know what? The day where black people stand up and say, we got to protect black women is always a day. I am going to be 100%. We got to protect black women, black children, black men. We got to protect black people. And then to look and see, you're an ally? Yes, because that man, okay, but you're the same one who, when the 14-year-old boy whistled, then, you want to string him up. So you got your husband and him and his friend came and killed him, threw him in the damn Tallahatchie River. You're not my ally. So I'm sitting here thinking about this, and at the same time, people say, see, Bill Cosby did him like they did Emmett Till. No, this is not the same thing. But what I'm saying is we are in the middle. It's almost like the Nation of Islam used to say, we've been run amok, led astray, bamboozled, hoodwinked, and we don't have enough sense to take a deep breath and understand that when a lawyer goes into a courtroom, I don't give a damn who it is. If you know how many black men and black women are in jail because the DA reneged on a promise? Yesterday was a victory for everybody who can stand up and say, you made a promise, you got to stick to it. But we can't get to that conversation because we are fixated on celebrities. And I think ultimately, I don't know whether the American Negro is going to make it, because what we've been showing over the last 2 days is all of our immaturity. And like a bolt of lightning, the Cosby verdict revealed what has already always been there, which is our deteriorating, very American fascination with celebrity and hot takes and quick. And it's just a very sad situation for me.
Amisha.
I agree with that. I think that at the end of the day, what happened with Cosby was just another long iteration of the justice that seems to find its way for the rich and powerful that eludes everybody else. And the frustration I have with it as somebody who has been a victim of being drugged and sexually assaulted is that when I hear people talk about this, and I was on Sirius XM yesterday, when I hear people talk about this, it's particularly people who look like those of us on this panel, and they are victim blaming, or they want to shield someone who has admitted to not only dropping drugs, but using those drugs for illicit activities. That's a problem. And I think that the fact that it's been glorified in hip hop for a very long time, the fact that misogyny and rape culture is a part of American culture and has been for a very long time, only adds an extra layer to this. But I think that we should look again to separate the man, Bill Cosby, from the guy who played in the TV show. You can be someone who has great talent and great art and has left their mark on the entertainment industry and still be a horrible member of society. And we've seen that time and time again. And that has nothing to do with skin color. We know there are a lot of white rapists out there as well. There are rapists of all different colors, creeds, and socioeconomic levels. But as a Black woman looking at this and knowing that 8 in 10 Black girls under the age of 14 have been sexually molested or raped, to see something like this happen and to see a man get off. The problem I have with this is that it pushes victims into the shadows. It makes them feel as though them coming out and telling their stories doesn't matter. It makes them feel as though the courage that it takes to actually report something, watching a system that is supposed to be based on justice, let someone walk free. That's a problem. In a society where it was a large open secret that Bill Cosby was doing these things for decades.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you tell the victims, and I also don't know, thinking broadly, what you tell women who face sexual assault and sexual abuse every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Reese.
Yeah, Amisha, I think you just really hit it out the park with that. And, what I have to say is this. Bill Cosby's not America's dad. Bill Cosby's not our son. He's not our uncle. He's not our dad. He's not our brother. He's Bill Cosby. Okay. And what happened was a process victory, as Dr. Carr pointed out, about, prosecutors not reneging on a deal to not prosecute, about the right to not self-incriminate. That's a Fifth Amendment right. That's a process victory. And that's indisputably a process victory for the rights of people to not self-incriminate specifically. Is it a moral victory? I don't believe so, but I understand that some people who believe Bill Cosby over the word of 60 women who have accused him of sexual assault, to them it is a moral victory. And to those who are a victim of sexual assault, who are triggered by it and who are traumatized by this, it's absolutely a miscarriage of justice. And so I think, to Dr. Carr's point, there are two separate conversations. There's a process conversation. There's a technicalities, a legality, a criminal justice system conversation about the way appeals court work, which is not a relitigation of the facts. It's not an exoneration of the case that was tried and convicted by a jury. It is simply a process victory for Bill Cosby. And perhaps we shall see if it's a victory for those who find themselves in situations where the prosecutor has gone back on their deal. And a lot of Black people have found themselves in that position. And they don't have the wealth and they don't have the ability to consistently try these cases and appeals. And then, even Bill Cosby is recently, they've suggested that he might sue for wrongful imprisonment. I mean, most people don't have the kind of funds to go through this amount of litigation. But I think people should be sensitive to the way that this is triggering to women and to men, because, to be clear, women are not the only ones who are victims of sexual assault. And so I think that there's room for a nuanced conversation that takes into account everybody's opinions and everybody's feelings in a way that's respectful. And I'm trying to do that because I do understand that there is a sentimental connection that many people have with Bill Cosby. And a lot of people do feel that he's innocent. And, I'm not going to judge them for that feeling per se, but I think that regardless of where you stand with Bill Cosby, you should be able to have the maturity to be cognizant of how your words impact victims of sexual assault.
Folks, I did not show this earlier. Ebony Benson had a book. Go ahead and show that. The book is called To Kill a Legacy, The Bill Cosby Trials. That is the book coming soon from Ebony Benson, who served as a spokeswoman for Bill Cosby. All right, folks, you want to talk about the legal fight? Donald Trump and the Trump organization, they are embroiled in one today. Indictments were unsealed today, showing the CFO for the Trump organization, Alan Weisselberg, he indicted 15 counts, folks. He turned himself in on charges
of some kind. Is that unusual? No, that's how it works. And Allison, we've been talking a lot over the last few days about how seeing your name on an indictment makes it real, makes it tangible.
In handcuffs at the courtroom, he is charged with grand larceny. Grand larceny in connection with failing to pay taxes on $1.7 million on fringe benefits from the company. The charges detail an alleged tax scheme, a tax evasion conspiracy spanning more than a decade, representing the most serious threat yet to the Trump organization. There's also, joining us right now is attorney Charles Coleman. Charles, in this particular indictment, they talk about this unindicted co-conspirator number one. Don't name him, but I think we can guess who that is. You look through this. How significant is this for Donald Trump and his sons and daughter and everyone involved in the Trump organization?
Well, good evening, Roland. I think that before we start doing a dance of joy in terms of watching Donald Trump prepare for jail, we might want to pump the brakes on this. Prosecutors are reaching a little bit right now, and they're reaching because they want to try to put enough pressure on Weisselberg to see if they can get him to flip so that that unindicted co-conspirator can become an indicted co-conspirator. That, of course, being former President Donald Trump. Right now, they don't have enough, and that's exactly why he's not indicted, because Donald Trump has presumably put enough space between himself and the actual allegations here with a number of different defenses that he could allege around his actual criminal culpability or lack thereof in this instance. So I think it's important that viewers understand that as of right now, the idea of Donald Trump standing and facing his day in court and going to jail, at least as it relates to these current charges, is a long way off. Tish James is not done with her investigation, and it is possible that in the course of this prosecution that Weisselberg may flip and provide prosecutors with additional information. But if that does not happen, I don't necessarily know that we have hit the jackpot yet in terms of what sort of charges will be brought against Trump, if any at all.
It is a long way off, but the fact that they are indicting not just Weisselberg, but also the Trump organization shows that this was a pattern within the company. What it also does is it forces Trump and his folks to play defense, because, you know, he's always throughout the whole campaign in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was hitting them all. Oh, no, I didn't pay taxes because I'm smart. No, you didn't pay taxes because you also were cheating. And what it also does is because, again, there's a reason why he was fighting so hard not to have his taxes revealed. Now they have those. And so the opportunity to not just, because first of all, we're talking about right now a Manhattan DA investigation. You mentioned Letitia James, a state attorney general. You also have the possibility of a federal investigation. So all of those things could be operating at the same time, because now you've opened Pandora's box.
That is true, but it's important to understand that even if he were to be convicted and charged in these instances, in most of those cases, as far as the tax evasion portion of it, they are likely talking about civil penalties. It would be a very high bar for us to get to a point where we're talking about putting Donald Trump in jail based off of what we know now, which is why prosecutors are so intent and gung-ho in terms of continuing those investigations and trying to get additional information. The big question at this point is, A, will Weisselberg flip? And B, if he flips, what additional information does he have that they will be able to bring more severe charges? Consider this, Roland, and it does matter. It does worth mentioning. The IRS, this is a tax case, a tax fraud case. The IRS has yet to file charges in this case. That's actually very, very telling. I'm not saying that they don't have a case. They absolutely do. But in terms of putting someone behind bars who isn't already named in this indictment, they've got a ways to go, and they're going to need additional information. Now, in terms of Trump and his circle and his circle of loyalty, we saw what happened with Michael Flynn. We saw what happened with Roger Stone. We saw what happened with Michael Cohen. We know that Donald Trump will not hesitate to throw Weisselberg under the bus. The question is, will Weisselberg smarten up before Donald Trump decides to oust him from his inner circle of trust?
As I see, panelists, questions. I'll start with Greg Carr. Greg, your question for Mr. Coleman.
No, listen, brother. As I was listening there and scribbling some notes, I really don't have a question. You have laid out what is before Trump. I guess the question I would ask would be about the case that the court's refusal to go down the path Letitia James and them wanted to go down to a few days ago. As this works its way through the court, do you think ultimately you're going to see the type of I don't know, political satisfaction in terms of bagging Trump, his sons, daughter, the family, that is spurring the kind of giddiness that we see on the face of our brother Roland Martin, and I think we're all sharing at this point? Are we going to get satisfaction from this ultimately?
Right. Well, first,
hold up. Listen, anything that brings Donald Trump pain brings me satisfaction.
Brother, I see you laughing. I'm with you. I'm just like
anything. Anything that causes him to spend money. Anything that pisses him off, I'm down with it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, first, Dr. Carr, I must say that that's the Howard University in me. So that's what you recognize in terms of what came out. That's what that is.
Appreciate it.
What I will say, brother, is part of what has happened, and to be honest with you, the same sense of anticlimactic feel that we were talking about in the previous discussion about Bill Cosby is actually similar in this way, because this is a byproduct of what happens when you inject the political system with the criminal justice system at an inordinate rate. And I can explain the parallel if need be, but as it relates to Trump, part of the issue is that Tish James, who is another Howard University graduate, near and dear friend, as well as Cy Vance, both campaigned in part around their zeal in terms of going after Donald Trump. And so now they're in a position where, despite the fact that they are outstanding public servants, they have to deliver on this promise. And there's going to be a huge a chasm between where Donald Trump is and their ability to get to him without information or support from someone from the inside. And that's where we are right now. And so the question that you posed is, essentially, if someone from the Trump organization goes to jail and his name or her name is not Donald Trump, is that going to be enough to satiate the bloodlust that the public has developed in terms of wanting him to be held accountable for what it is that he has done? My answer is probably not. And the reason I say that is we've seen people go to jail from Trump's camp. And we are not going to be satisfied until, proverbially speaking, in that spades game, somebody throws down the big joker and we see Donald Trump in shackles. Yeah. And that, I don't know, is going to happen, despite the efforts of what some very talented prosecutors and investigators are currently undergoing in their jobs.
Thank you, brother. Yes, sir.
Reese, Amisha.
Hi, yes. What we saw in the Mueller investigation was there were these lower level people who were who flipped, right, who cut deals, and the thought process is that this was some master plan to get to Trump, and it never materialized. Basically, everybody just ended up getting off scot-free, and then eventually Trump pardoned the people that actually did get convicted and served some sort of jail time, or in some cases, like Roger Stone, he didn't have to serve much jail time at all. What is your read on this situation with the organization itself being indicted, as well as Allen Weisselberg? Does this look like a flip strategy, or does this look like, to your point, they ran on accountability for Trump and the Trump organization? Is this an answer the mail, just get somebody and go home kind of strategy? What is your read on that?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the prosecutors absolutely feel like Weisselberg may be the weakest link and someone who can provide them with the biggest sort of doorway or entree to a bigger, sort of more substantive set of charges. And that's what they're trying to do. If they can't get that, and if they can't convince him to flip, then putting him in jail may be the thing that they offer to the public to say, we indicted the Trump organization. And then what they'll do is essentially blame the system if, in fact, they can't either secure a conviction or go deeper in terms of actually securing an indictment and charges and a conviction against Donald Trump himself. What I'll say about all of that is there is a possibility that Weisselberg may flip. And what I mean by that is Michael Cohen has talked recently about the fact that Donald Trump does not have a problem throwing people who have been loyal to him and his organization under the bus. If Weisselberg is smart, he will hear that and see the writing on the wall. This is someone who is facing anywhere between 5 to 15 years if he were to be convicted and there was going to be jail time attached. Again, a lot of that is not guaranteed. I think the conviction is probably a smarter bet than the actual jail time. Nevertheless, having said that, Weisselberg is not a young man. So the question is, are you willing to risk spending a potential good chunk of the life you have left behind bars for someone who otherwise might throw you under the bus? Because of those questions, I am not convinced that Weisselberg will remain as loyal as Donald Trump needs him to be. The bigger issue is, what does he have to offer that will ultimately stick to the former president?
Ain't nowhere in the hell, Misha, I'm going to jail for his punk ass. Go ahead.
And I wouldn't either, but I do think that there's something to be said about the people who Donald Trump chose to be in the executive level of the Trump organization. These are people who are high-level loyalists, people who have been loyalists for over 4 decades, people who he has entrusted so much of shaded behavior to. We know that Donald Trump does not believe in a paper trail. He's not sending things in emails. He's not doing things over text communications. We know that he is involved in some really shady dealings. But with that being said, the majority of the hammer, if it's going to fall, it's going to fall on these executives whose names the general public could care less about and doesn't really know. So I think that aside from there being damage to the image of Donald Trump and his reputation when it comes to these businesses, and even that is not going to hurt him in terms of his base. His base could care less. And he's already going around the country talking about how much of essentially this is a witch hunt and another extension of the Mueller investigation, if you will. How do you think that this plays into, and I know you're trying to separate the politics from the actual legal side of this, how does this play in for those who are ultimately, in my view, going to be disappointed when Trump, Ivanka, Eric, and DJ T Jr. eventually get off?
That's a great question. I think what may happen is that prosecutors will have to assess where their cases are and start to level set around expectations among the public. You know, one of the things that is easy to do, and I think part of what may have happened in the Cosby case, I know I made an analogy before, is that when you're coming into office as a prosecutor, as a law enforcement official, you're making promises without information, quite frankly, especially around investigations that precede you. So what I mean by that is, in the case of the Montgomery County prosecutor in Cosby's case, and in this case, you have law enforcement officials, prosecutors, attorney generals, DAs, who are looking at the public landscape, but don't necessarily have information on the inside or from the inside about what's available and what's not. And so you're making promises to the public about what it is that you may be able to deliver without fully knowing what's available to you, and obviously not being able to predict what's going to happen in the future. To counteract that, what politicians and elected officials are going to have to do, if they get to a point where they see we don't have enough information around Trump or enough in terms of being able to secure strong convictions around his higher level of employees or him himself, they may have to begin starting to level set in the public around what the expectation should be, and then trying to reframe the narrative about what justice looks like in something like this. And basically say, look, we got an indictment against the Trump organization. We got sanctions. This is a good thing. This is justice. This is moving the needle. This is accountability. To thwart off and stave off some of the public's criticisms, who might say, well, you promised us this, and this is why we voted for you, and you seem like you were confident going after him. What happened to all that? You know, as we say, keep that same energy. What happened to that energy that you had when you were running and asking for my vote? Now you haven't delivered. So I think what you will see is elected officials who will look to get in front of those narratives if they don't have enough substance to back up in terms of a grand jury indictment and ultimately a conviction.
Here, Attorney Charles Coleman, we shall appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, Roland, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you so very much. All right, folks. Remember that crazy ass white woman who acted a fool at the SoHo Hotel in New York, Mia Ponsetto? Yeah, SoHo Karen. Well, guess what? You know, she's facing hate crime charges. Remember, she accused a black teen of stealing her iPhone. He didn't steal it. She appeared virtually in court where a New York grand jury indicted her on 2 counts of unlawful imprisonment as a hate crime, aggravated harassment, and endangering the welfare of a child. Her next court date is set for October 20th. See, Reese? See, this is why I keep trying. Let these crazy ass white folks keep acting the fool, throw their ass in jail, fire them from their jobs, and look, all will be well. I say send all they punk asses to jail.
Listen, I'm not an abolitionist, okay? So I don't have a problem with her going to jail or any crazy ass white person going to jail, especially when they messing. I'm not gonna be cussing and carrying on today for a change, Roland. But especially when they messing with black people, particularly black children. I think, you know, this is a moral victory, at least to have the charge. It's very hard to prove intent for a racial intent for hate crimes, but she's charged with enough other things. I don't know how much it dissuades crazy ass white people from doing shit, because that's why they're crazy ass white people and not rational white people, because they are so emboldened by racism and entitlement and thinking that they're overseers of black people. But whether it prevents the next person from doing it or not, it sure feels good when every single last one of them, or anytime any one of them, gets held accountable.
Amisha, the cop who obtained the arrest warrant for Breonna Taylor, is still fired. That's right. The Louisville Metro Police Department Merit Board stood by their decision to fire former Detective Joshua James for lying on an affidavit claiming he personally confirmed details in the case surrounding Taylor's ex-boyfriend. James appealed the firing, claiming he was not receiving equal discipline to other officers who have done similar actions. James and his attorney plan to appeal the case again by taking it to Jefferson Circuit Court. Amisha, I keep saying, this is my standard. If a cop lies on a police report and an affidavit, fire their ass.
Absolutely. And it happens so often. And I guess even for James to come out and basically say that other people didn't receive this type of treatment, that tells us a couple things. First and foremost, a lot of officers, even on his own force, who are lying on these reports and nothing is happening. But also in his case, somebody died. Like, there's a reason why. And I think that if this case wasn't elevated so much in the media, he probably would have gotten off just like the other people who he's claiming did as well. But yes, actions have consequences, and they should have consequences. Police officers have gotten away without them for far too long. They make lying on reports a regular regimen. And at this point, there's something that has to be done about that. And I think that those swift firings will definitely change the game when it comes to the willingness of people to create these stories and then go ahead and push them out when we see investigation after investigation where the initial report that police gave is totally different than what body cam footage or what happened on the scene actually was.
Greg, remember the two teens in Ocean City who were viciously body slammed by cops for vaping on the Ocean City boardwalk? Well, guess what? They're suing that particular town. Of course, that video went viral after police they showed tasing Taser Griffith as his hands were raised. Another video that went viral. Brian Anderson was pinned to the ground by cops. He says he was choked and kicked multiple times. The lawyers for both teens said they were victims of unreasonable police force and expect the officers to be charged in the suit. The NAACP and other civil rights organizations condemned the Ocean City Police Department and called for the officers' suspension. Ocean City police are still conducting an internal review.
Well, brother, I watched it. I'm sure you, as we all did, watched that press conference with young brother Griffin and his brother and Brian Anderson, and then the lawyer who spoke. But the key person in that frame wasn't even the state senator who was out there. Very important lawyer herself. But the most important person sitting there in that seersucker suit with his hands folded looking was Billy Murphy. Y'all got Billy Murphy in your ass now. The man who settled with Baltimore for $6.4 million for Freddie Gray, and a noted civil rights attorney. And for those in pop culture, remember that was Clay Davis's lawyer in The Wire. So I just got one word for what's going to happen in Ocean City. Y'all get ready to get paid, because as Clay Davis would say, shit.
Now I tell y'all, we keep talking about what happens when you hold cops accountable. Other cops get the message. Let's go to Colorado, where a police officer is facing felony assault charges for allegedly using an illegal chokehold on a suspect. He was turned in by two fellow cops. Officer Ken Amick, a 15-year police veteran with the Greeley Police Department, is on unpaid leave after Weld County prosecutors filed second-degree assault charges against him. According to the reports, Amick and several other officers responded to a call near City Hall where Matthew Wilson was threatening to start a fire. Wilson had an outstanding warrant, and when Amick tried to arrest Wilson, he became agitated. Investigators say that when Officer Amick put Wilson in a chokehold during the scuffle, Amick kneed Wilson in the leg. Amick was immediately removed from patrol duty. He has a court hearing next month. See, accountability, and this is the whole deal. When other cops stop making excuses for cops, Amisha, then things are done right. And so that's where I keep telling people, it's slowly but surely, when you hold cops accountable, and then when you say, if you are a cop and you witness wrongdoing and you don't say anything, we're going to hold you accountable. Yeah, folk gonna start talking.
Exactly. There is a code of silence. There's also a code of blue, and blue backs blue time and time again. And we know that in many cases, these aren't isolated incidents where a cop uses a chokehold and he's the only cop on the on site when it happens. There are typically other cops there as well, and they just kind of shield each other away from any liability. At this point, I think that the police reform narrative that we're still waiting to see actually happen in practice. There are certain things that we can do at the local level, certain things that can happen very specifically within police departments themselves, where police empower other police officers to tell, see something, say something. But on top of that, also not be afraid that they are going to be ostracized or not given assignments or removed from certain things because they stepped up and spoke out. I think that we have to see increases in penalties for cops that do bad things or cops that use things like chokeholds or other instances of brutal behavior that has already been banned. As we all know, a ban does not stop an officer from using something that has been banned. But we also have to ensure that we are being very serious about making sure that the other officers are protected who actually reach out and make those reports to tell when they see something. Because in many cases, it doesn't happen because those officers fear some type of retaliatory measures as well. So I think that in this case, yes, things went the way they should have gone. Those officers did what they need to do. I would hope that other officers across the country feel empowered when they see some wrongdoing to do the same thing.
Like I said, you got to put it in the contracts. And you got to tell every cop, you witness wrongdoing and you don't report it, we're going to hold you accountable, Reese.
Absolutely. And I mean, we see it on the extreme end of this in the George Floyd case, or Derek Chauvin case, and the other officers that stood by and did absolutely nothing while Derek Chauvin executed George Floyd in broad daylight. And now they're facing charges. And so the cops have to understand that they're just as invested as the victims of police brutality are, because their asses are going to be on the line. And so I think that, you have a lot of cops that say they're good cops and, these cops don't represent all of us. Well, that's the way you prove it, by turning in those that are engaging in this police misconduct. Because to be honest, when it comes from a fellow cop, there's much more likely for it to be believed and get a conviction. That was very key in the Derek Chauvin case, where you had cop after cop get up there and say this was not normal behavior. This was far outside of, standard protocol. And that, I think, made a huge difference in terms of getting a conviction in that case, in addition to obviously the very gut-wrenching video footage that we saw. So cops, put your money where your mouth is. If you believe that this stuff is not representative of you, then step up and turn those people in that are conducting themselves in a way that does not reflect well on the entire department.
And you got cops, Greg, who are always talking about on the community, oh, y'all need to end this no snitching stuff. Well, hell, why don't y'all start?
Mm-hmm.
Roland, again, this is something that sets you apart from so many others who are claiming to do news. You're in the street. And we understand that when you are in the street, when you're organizing, when you're pushing, it's sometimes difficult to see the large scale change when you're literally in the face of that small stuff that's incremental. As we sit here and wait for Tim Scott to come up with whatever he's writing on the back of a piece of tissue paper as his counter proposed to the George Floyd bill, what have we seen in the last few days? Apparently today, Jim Clyburn then got his head together with Scott. Now they talking to Lindsey Graham, who apparently has been talking to Ben Crump. And can we pull some out? Hakeem Jeffries blew the whistle and said it's the police unions terrified that are torpedoing legislation because they don't want to give up any notion of qualified immunity, which includes intent, but also extreme recklessness, also depraved indifference to human life. And Jeffries is saying we're going to get something done in the next 6 months, but maybe even sooner. I'm saying all that to say that all of this desperation is a result of people being in the streets, and not just in protests all last summer up to now. I'm talking about that organizing work. Cliff and Latosha out there, you going on location, places to places, new mayors in places like Buffalo, New York, or in St. Louis. Inch by inch, it's crumbling. They would like nothing more than to say, we ain't passing nothing. But and then finally, just to the point you raised, Reese, if you're a human being on a police force, if you were the interim police chief in Louisville, like the sister who fired that white boy, and then they're going to try to get him his job back by going to court, don't matter. Do the right thing. Why? Because the tide of history is moving inexorably, and we can see it crumbling. We just got to keep the faith and keep fighting. That's what we got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're absolutely right about that, which is why what we do here on this show, which is why we want you to support what we do. So I was going to wait. Anthony, come here. So I was going to wait to do this here, y'all. And so I've been telling you, we've been moving. So we're actually in our new space. And we have not completed anything at all. So we're going to do this here. Take it all the way out, Anthony. So you'll see we got a single camera set up, y'all. We normally do. We're using the StreamYard. Our control room is not set up. And so just want to give you a sense of we're putting everything together. And so we literally are unpacking and moving everything over. And so you're going to get a shot of our control room when Anthony completes this turn. Just if y'all think we ain't trying to go next level, watch this. So it's all about open space, all about art. Wow. And so that right there is, you can just zoom right in. That right there is our new control room. So normally that's where all the staff is in there, how we actually doing this show, routing everything through there. So we're having to sit here now to utilize StreamYard because we're setting everything up. Internet was installed today. We're putting everything together. Now go right down. Yeah, just zoom it all the way in. Zoom all the way in. Keep going all the way into the control room. And so just you'll get a sense of what we're doing. adding new features, all kind of different stuff. And so I told y'all I wasn't playing. I told y'all I was not playing with what we're doing and what we're building here for Roland Martin Unfiltered. You can bring it back around, Anthony. And so once it all is finished, y'all going to really be blown away by what we're doing. So I always do that because I want you to understand what your dollars are going to support. Because other folks who've asked y'all for money, I see they never show y'all what the money goes to. So you actually get to see it. And so that's why we ask you to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar you give goes to support what we do. And so you can, so our ask is real simple. We're trying to get 20,000 of our fans to contribute on average $50 each over the course of a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. And you can do so. Some people have given less. People have given $1, $5, 10. We accept all of it. I've been places. I told y'all when I was in Chicago last week, a brother walked up to me with an SCIU shirt on, got out of his car in the rain, walked up to me, handed me a $10 bill and said, "Thanks for what you're doing." When got in his car and went on home. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I wanted to personally hand this money to you." That was a woman. What is her name? Was Renee. Give me 1 second. Renee actually flew in from Florida. She was here on some other business. Renee flew in, and I'm trying to find her email. Her name was Renee Jackson. Renee Jackson came by the office, y'all, before she went to the airport to personally hand me her $80 for our Bring the Funk fan club. And she said, "I watched this show." She had her medication. She's fighting a lawsuit. She had her cane. She said, "But I wanted you to see. I wanted to support you and support the show." Y'all, that's the kind of fabulous fans that we have that makes all of this possible. And y'all have to understand, the previous place we were in, we just had one set. We couldn't move around. That office, we didn't have any opportunity for growth. We thank 50 Can for allowing us to sublet that place. That place was costing us about $7,000 a month. You have to understand, this new office, which is this whole new look, is going to cost us $15,500 a month. And so it's doubling our rent, but it allows us to actually expand our capabilities. I told y'all our OTT channels are being built. That's $153,700. The website been totally rebuilt. That's $7,000. So right there, that's $160,000 you're talking about. You throw in what the rent, what that means. Now you're talking about that's another $180,000, $200,000. So between new office space, OTT channels, and the website, you're talking about $360,000 of being spent. And so that's why we are real clear. So some of y'all are like, "Man, why are you sitting here kicking these advertisers behind?" That's why we need resources to do what we do, to pay staff, to be able to expand our offerings. And so that's why it's important for you to support us. Please do so. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, Venmo.com/RM Unfiltered. PayPal is paypal.me/R Martin Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com or Roland@RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Want to thank Greg, Reese, and Amisha for being with us. Erica, y'all ask Erica Savage Wilson. She's healing. She's getting better. And so we always give a shout out to Erica, who normally joins us on Thursday. And so we're still thinking about her and praying for her as well. Folks, we're going to end the show with one of our Essence throwbacks. Happening right now is actually the Essence versus partnership, Bobby Brown versus Keith Sweat. I'm gonna go with the OG, Keith Sweat. I mean, but Bobby got hits. Bobby got hits. But guess what? Keith got Make It Last Forever. That's all I'm saying. All right, y'all. But we gonna end this with our Coca-Cola Essence Festival throwback. My man, Pastor Lester Love from the gospel stage and the Essence throwback. Y'all, that's how we gonna end today's show. I'm gonna see y'all tomorrow. Holla!
Everybody, get that cell phone. Just put it in the air like that. God reigns and is control of everything, every circumstance, every situation. I want everybody to get that cell phone and just wave it in the air. Jesus is the light of the world, and He reigns.
Everything that I have accomplished, all
the trophies that I I'm nothing but compared to you, Lord. The only thing that matters is I know that Jesus the way, Jesus reigns. Jesus reigns, Jesus reigns. Nobody else. Jesus reigns. Every hand lifted, every eye closed. Would you open your mouth and maybe you still don't know the party right now? I just want to tell Jesus. Only want to tell you all I love Before you sit down, put him on front of me and tell him he reigns, he reigns, he reigns.